Hello everyone. So it's been 3 months since your prelims 2025, and if you have failed to qualify in the previous prelims, it's high time you start analyzing, it's high time you start introspecting the reasons that led to your failure. And until you have the correct assessment, until you have the correct diagnosis of why you have failed, the same failure might even repeat in the upcoming year. So that's why I thought I'll make a video helping you understand how to look into your past performance and how should be the remedial actions be in the upcoming months, right? It's only with that clarity you'll be able to ensure that the next attempt becomes a successful one. So I would say that the next 20-25 minutes of this video discussion would be focused on how do you look into your past performance so that you can adopt a course correction in the upcoming months. So these are the different aspects that you can see on the slide here, which we'll be discussing. First is you need to have a clear sense of the margin with which you had failed to qualify, right? And if you have been giving your prelims in the last few years consecutively, it's time you actually learn how to look at the jump in your performance over the years, right? You need to have a clear sense of what that jump is and whether the jump is meaningful or not, or is there a gradual increase. All such aspects should be really studied. So that's what we'll be discussing as one of the part of today's discussion. And in addition to that, as you can see, we'll talk about the different steps that you can take for remediation. All right. So what should be your vision towards remediation so as to ensure the same mistakes do not repeat again? What would that be? We'll have a discussion on that. And how different is your method going to be for this year compared to the last year, right? Because if you follow the same book, same reading, same preparation pattern, then how is the result, how is the outcome going to be any different, right? So those aspects should be discussed as well. And then there could be certain aspects which may be missed out by you, but which can be picked up by a mentor or which can be picked up by some expert, right? So you should be familiar with what those issues could actually be before it's too late. All right. So knowing about all of this can help you kickstart your prelims preparation in the right path. So let's have a look at these aspects one after the other. First, when you look at your performance in the last 3 years, so let's say you've been giving your prelims in 23, 24, 25, the cutoff has kept on increasing over the years. So 2023, the cutoff was around, let's say 74, 75, and 24 it was around 85, 86, 87, something around that marks for general category, and for 2025 I'm assuming it's 90 plus in the latest prelims. So you can see the cutoff keeps increasing, right? It's simply because the students are able to understand the evolving nature of this examination. Not that UPSC's questions have become really easy, right? I would say that the question paper standard starting from 23 is almost similar, but the performance of the students has been slowly increasing because many students have been able to rightly study and figure out the nature of evolution of UPSC's standard of questions, and they have rightly caught the pulse of UPSC. So you can see it's like a very significant jump that's happening year on year on year. Unless UPSC makes a very drastic change to its nature of questions asked in the upcoming year, I don't see any reason for the cutoff to fall down. It may hover around the same range, around 85 to 95 would be the range in the upcoming years as well, unless UPSC gives a shock by really creating a very difficult question paper in the upcoming years, right? So if you are somebody who feels that if you have failed to qualify in the last 3 prelims, and let's say in 2023 your cutoff was something around 70, and in this year 2024 it was around 80, or let's say 75, or this year it was around 80 or 82, right? You may feel happy that there is a slow gradual increase, but what if I say this gradual increase may not really help you get that jump so as to qualify if at all the cutoff happens to be around 95 next year? See, the UPSC aspirant ecosystem evolves. They predict, they are able to understand the nature of questions, and a lot of training goes into preparing them, right? So if all things being the same, and if the standard of question paper remains the same in the next year in 2026, definitely the cutoff, if it's of the same standard, it will be around 95 plus. So if you are thinking that from 70 I have increased my mark up to 85, and if you think that it's going to gradually increase it to 90 next year, and if that is going to be useful for you, you may again have a failure, right? So do not feel happy that your marks are slowly increasing every consecutive prelims, every successive prelims. That may not be useful, right? But at the same time, if let's say in 2023 your mark in prelims was just 40, and 24 it was 65, and last year it was 91, right, or 90. But still, if you have failed to qualify, I would say you are on the right track. You are able to get that quantum jump. You're able to get that leap forward. You're not slowly rising, because slow rise in your marks may not actually catch up with the speed with which UPSC's question nature evolves. Right? And I don't really believe in this statement that 2023 was the most difficult question paper, 25 was easier. No. Even in 23, there were people who got 130 plus, 150 plus. Right? So every year there are aspirants for whom the paper is easy. So there's no point in comparing yourself with your close circles and feeling good that everybody felt the paper to be difficult. No, not really. There are people who will always feel it easy. Right? So you have to be in that league so as to have a very predictable and a certain success in prelims. Okay? So do not be concerned that your mark was just 40 in the 2024 prelims, and if your marks have just improved by 60 to 70, you are on the right track. There's nothing to be worried about. Probably you'll get another nice jump this year. The method of your preparation is actually ensuring you a great increase in marks, and that great increase in mark is what is necessary, not the gradual increase in marks. For those who keep on gradually increasing your marks, let's say you hover around 75 to 85, okay, 75, next year you get 80, next year you get 85. There could be one lucky year for you when the nature of question paper becomes almost similar. So the slow increase, let's say in the 4th or 5th or 6th attempt, you're able to cross 95 marks. And if the question paper standard remains the same, maybe that 4th or 5th attempt could be your lucky attempt. But I say, why not make it certain that the very next year's attempt, there will be a nice significant 15 to 20 mark jump in your scores. If that's not happening, that is your reason for worry. Don't be worried just simply because your last prelims performance was 40. No. If you see a good jump from 40 to 60, 65 or 65 to 85, you are on the right track. Right? And just because you keep on missing prelims by a margin of less than 4 to 5 marks, there is nothing to be happy about, because I know a lot of aspirants who finally get pushed out of the race. They exhaust their attempts always hovering around the same range. Okay, so understand the most important aspect of analyzing your previous year's prelims performance is to check whether this jump is whether it's happening or not. That's the most important part. Right? What you need to be worried about is if your score in certain subjects keep on remaining the same, no matter what you study. Let's say whatever you study with history, always the total score is around 30 to 40%. You're not able to increase it to 60 to 70% at all. If that's not happening at all, that's something to be worried about. Right? So you cannot feel happy that your score in some subjects are not improving, whereas in other subjects it's really improving. No, it has to improve across all areas, because you simply don't know which area will be given a higher weightage in the upcoming prelims. Right? There is no such thing called as a gradual progress in one subject while ignoring another subject. It may work for a few, right? But the safest way to prepare for prelims is to really have a good grasp across all subjects. Right? You have to be worried if certain subjects don't improve at all when you give multiple prelims. That's a red flag. That's an area of concern. Look back at your past performance. Right? And if you're not able to score consistently more than 80 marks in CSAT, even if you have given 2 prelims, if you have not scored more than 80 marks, you should be really, really worried and concerned about, because the same failure may repeat next year as well. Because CSAT is more like a skill that you already have even before you enter into civil service preparation process. Right? So you should have taken care to increase the skill if it was not there. And even after 2 or 3 years, if your CSAT score doesn't even cross 66 marks, it means that there could be some serious issues. Right? So these are aspects that should be a very important cause of concern. Let us not gloss over our failures. Let us not mince words, and let's not be artificially optimistic. Okay? Prelims failure is a reality check. It's like a jolt to wake you up. And if you feel that even now you wouldn't listen to what UPSC is conveying to you, there is very less chance of improvement in the upcoming year. So that's why I have this very first slide to make a very bold statement about what you need to be concerned about. Concerned about whether a good jump is happening in your score and not a gradual increase. UPSC evolves faster than your scores actually increase, right? Or students catch up the pulse of UPSC faster than your gradual increase in your scores. Second, be worried if a few subjects always keeps dragging you down. What is preventing you from developing expertise and strength and command in those subjects? Be worried about that. And be worried about a greater than 80 marks if you're not able to get it consistently. Yes, you should be worried. All right. So if once you start putting your concern into these areas, definitely there is a opportunity, definitely there is a way to remedy these issues, and let's see what that is. First, let me take one subject here as a reference, and with the help of that one subject, let me tell you how do you start remedification, how do you start correcting your mistakes, right? Let's take this one subject, medieval history, okay, a part of Indian history. With that one subject, let me teach you these three fundamental aspects of your preparation that has to be remedied, right? I don't want to jump from one subject to the other, just with one subject. You apply the same template to every other subject and see if you have clarity, if you can improve on all these parameters. All right. So when you start course correcting yourself, let's say you feel history is always dragging you, only 30 to 40% of the questions that you are able to get it right, irrespective of 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years of study, you're not able to increase it beyond a 30% correct performance, right? The issue could be because you don't have clarity, that is, depth of knowledge may be missing, and a few questions every year they test the depth. What if the span of knowledge, the coverage of areas may not be sufficient, and a few questions every year, getting it right depends on how broad your coverage is. A few questions every year, they overlap between prelims and mains aspects, and without mains preparation being properly done, being properly completed, you cannot get these questions right, right? And let me give you examples for that. So you have two questions here, and both these questions are in the context of the Mongol invasions into India during the time of Delhi Sultanate, right? And let me tell you, this question is a pretty difficult question. It's not so easy. Only those who have a very clear idea about the evolution of Mongol attack on India. It starts with the time of Iltutmish onwards, goes on till the period of Muhammad bin Tughlaq, right? So unless you have a very good clarity on which sultans have faced the Mongol threats in what manner, what type of preparation, unless you have a clarity on that, you cannot attempt this question. This is what I mean by depth, right? And you don't have to look any further beyond Satish Chandra. Satish Chandra has very good idea about this particular topic. Around 2 pages of content in Satish Chandra addresses this. But a superficial reading of Satish Chandra will not give you the depth. Repeated readings, very good clarity on progression. Under Iltutmish, what has been the extent to which Mongols were able to enter into India. Under Alauddin Khalji, what has been the extent. Under Ghiyazuddin Tughlaq, what was the extent? Under Muhammad bin Tughlaq, how did they come in or did they get back, right? So all of these aspects you find in Satish Chandra, and until multiple readings have gone into it, you cannot get this question right. It's not easy. Even options, the way it's given is also not so easy, right? And even this question, it was during the reign of Iltutmish that Chengiz Khan reached the Indus in pursuit of the fugitive Khwarizm prince. Yes, this is right. When you read Satish Chandra, you get to understand that that's the way Iltutmish was able to save his empire from Mongol attack. He said no to the Khwarizm. Khwarizm is a region, right? The prince of Khwarizm, he wanted to enter into India. He wanted to find a hiding spot in India, but Iltutmish said no. If he would have accepted him, Mongols would have attacked India. Mongols would have attacked Delhi, right? So the first statement is right. It was during the reign of Muhammad bin Tughlaq that Taimur occupied Multan and crossed the Indus. Muhammad bin Tughlaq was in the first few decades of the 14th century, that is 1330s. Taimur's attack was 1398. They are not contemporaneous. So you can eliminate 2. So 2 can be eliminated. Either it's 1 only or 3 only, right? The question is simple. If you would have known this first part, right? It's not even necessary that you should know the third part. Right? Okay, what if you did not know the second aspect? Let's say you were not familiar with the second aspect, which is actually not acceptable. So even then, you can understand, Devaraya belonged to the Sangama dynasty. Sangama dynasty was the first house of Vijayanagar. Sangama, then you have Saluva, then Tuluvas and Aravidu, right? So Sangama dynasty started during the time of Muhammad bin Tughlaq, which is 1330s. right? So definitely Sangama ruler Devaraya II should have ruled somewhere here near 1330s, or maybe in the first part of 15th century, that is 1410, 1420. Right? Vasco da Gama reached India in 1498. Right? So it cannot be contemporaneous at all. Alright. So that sense of chronology, if you were to get it right, you need clarity, you need depth. This is not something that develops by simple memorization of what happened when, because it is impossible to know the date and timing of each and every ruler. It's only with the clarity on interconnections you will be able to get the chronology based questions right. Alright. So that's what I mean by the necessity of depth, so as to get a few questions like these correct. But depth alone cannot suffice, because to handle a question like these are not questions which goes to the depth. It only touches you about the superficial level, broad knowledge. Are you familiar with whether Bhoja belongs to Rashtrakuta dynasty or not? No. Bhoja was a ruler of Paramaras. And what about the other three rulers? Have you simply heard their name in a particular context or not? That's all that's being tested here. Right? They're not going into all the wars fought between Bhoja and later Chalukyas. They were contemporaries. So UPSC is not getting into these depths. UPSC is simply exploring, are you familiar with this name called Bhoja? Similarly, are you familiar with Mughal official terminology? Right? Who is an Amil? Who is a Shikdar? Who is a Diwan? Who is a Mir Bakshi? So those kind of administrative terms. They are not going into the functions of Amil. They are not going into whether Shah Jahan had created a new office or did he maintain the existing office of Amil or not, right? So such kind of depths not explored. Simply, have you ever heard of this word called as Amil, right? So that's what I mean by coverage. You have to cover more and more and more areas. Such kind of coverage will help you get a few questions like these right. So it's like all these skills, all these methods of remediation should go hand in hand. It's not like you'll only focus on one. It's not like you'll only focus on the depth, go further and further into one topic, leaving and neglecting another topic. No, you need both. You need both depth as well as a coverage, right? And what do I mean by convergence? There are certain areas, there are certain questions which you can get right only if you have prepared for your mains. So let's say in mains you prepare for art and culture. And in art and culture you prepare about Pallava art. And in Pallava art you prepare about Arjuna's penance, that huge stone structure that you find in Mahabalipuram. If you have prepared for that, you get this right. Right? Similarly, when you prepare for temple architecture in South India, you would definitely come across this Chalukyan era cave temples in Vatapi. Right? And a very important iconography, a very important sculpture that you find in Chalukyan temples is that of the Varaha imagery. The Varaha image is often presented as a god in many of the cave temples. Right? So that is what is asked. It cannot be Mount Abu. Chalukyan kingdom is a South Indian kingdom. So you can eliminate this, you can include this, right? So what I'm trying to say is this happens as a result of good mains preparation, right? So similarly for ancient India as well, only when you have prepared on mains aspects on literature development during ancient India, you come across various Jain literature, Buddhist literature, and questions on these were asked in various prelims examinations. All right. So it's only when all these three aspects are well taken care of, I would say there is a scope for remediation. Okay, it's not a mindless exercise where you take Satish Chandra or NCRTs, you simply go through it again and again and again without understanding whether all these aspects are getting addressed or not. Alright, so once these aspects are addressed, next is your work to get into the question of skill set. Right? What if in all the last prelims we are not able to manage time properly? Right? You felt the time was always insufficient. And let me tell you, there are people who score 120 plus, 130 plus. After scoring 130, they still have 5 minutes left in the examination hall. Right? So it means that it's time you learn something of time management from them. Right? If all your attempts, you feel that there was always a crunch of time. Okay, like 10 to 15 questions, you are not able to give your best, you are not able to give your patient thought to it simply because time was running out. It means there is a problem. So how are you going to address that? right? And that is linked to your confidence issue. So not so the in the back of the mind, when you always know that time is running out, your confidence in attempting the questions, your confidence in coming back and spending the right amount of time is all a problem. All right. So first issue is you have to address learning part, subject part. Right. Now I have given you a template for medieval India. Right. When you look at medieval India, if medieval India is your difficult part of history, which always keeps you pulling down, these are the aspects with which you have to look into it. Right. Similarly, for polity as well, a similar approach can be followed. For geography as well, a similar approach can be followed. Okay. Just to simply avoid repetition, I am only focusing on a very narrow area to give you a clarity on what do I mean by these words. Alright, once these are addressed, it's time you start addressing the other peripheral issues. So 80% of your remediation is towards this, maybe 20% of your remediation is towards your skill set. Right? So focus whether you are remedying in this particular manner or not. So now that you have decided to remedy your mistakes, remedy your shortcomings, I'll tell you what factors will prevent you from improving yourself. Right? So these are some weaknesses which may not be really clearly visible to you, and so let me just give you some idea so that you can be aware of them. First is, you may end up wasting your time on reading content that actually may not matter at all. I'll tell you why. Many students, they tend to master PYQ areas, right? And one such area is this previous year's question asked about Mongol invasions. It makes no sense to go and now master this area, because I feel UPSC has enough milked this area. There have been enough number of permutations and combinations of questions asked from this area in the previous years. So I don't see any incentive for UPSC to frame a fresh question out of it, because nothing more can be framed. Everything else, some 3-4 statements which actually captures almost every detail about Mongol invasion, has already been asked. Right? Now when you go and try to master it, when you try to go to the depths of all this topic, you are actually wasting time. Right? And similarly, just because a question is asked in the previous years which talks about different kings of different dynasties, right? Now you start reading a content, you take Lucent textbook, right? And many students are reading Lucent GK book on history these days. You have a table like this, all the different dynasties and all the different founders. Trust me, nobody who clears this exam clears by memorizing and mugging up all these factual data without understanding the context in which these facts would have even figured. Alright, so you will have hundreds of these kind of tables in such books, such reading material, in compilations issued in the market. And going and spending time trying to read this is a waste of time, because you are reading non-usable content. You may put in your best of your efforts to memorize these aspects, these contents, these facts. It may give you a sense that you are familiar with these facts, but on the day of your exam, you cannot really extract out of all the memory that you have from these tables memorized. Memorization is not the key, right? So either by reading content which has no potential to be asked as a question, just because UPSC has asked enough questions on those topics, right? So one reason why you look at PYQ is also to understand whether the topic is exhausted or not. All right, and then reading content which is actually unusable, which for the time being may give you a good feel that you have covered a topic, but may not really be usable, because the method in which you learn a particular topic is not the right way of learning it, right? So I would say that 30 to 40% of your time would be spent, if you do not understand this issue, 30 to 40% of your time would either keep on revolving around PYQs, or it would keep on revolving around memorization of facts, simply because the problem is in the first step. What is the first step? And why does it happen? Simply because of the problem in the first point, that is your weakness, your inability to widen and deepen your learning. And since we have been discussing medieval India as a reference throughout this entire discussion, let me use another example from medieval India itself. Students who mug up medieval India would simply know something about Rajaraja Chola. They would know something about Rajendra Chola. Correct? But they would not know the interconnections between the Chola dynasty and other dynasties. Like, let's say, it was during the time of Rajaraja Chola. Rajaraja Chola made attacks on the Chera kingdom. He was able to capture the port of Kandalur port. Rajaraja Chola made an attack on the later Chalukyan kingdom, but he couldn't succeed against the later Chalukyan ruler Taila. right? Rajaraja Chola made an attack on the Sinhala king. Okay, so now you get to understand, okay, Rajaraja Chola is connected with later Chalukya. So you will definitely know Rajendra Chola would be connected to the later Chalukyas. It was during the time of Rajendra Chola, the later Chalukyas will be defeated. There will be a sack of the city of Manyaketa, which was the capital of the later Chalukyas. Right? And you get to also understand that this simply happened because a ruler by the name of Bhoja, who was a Paramara ruler in the north, was attacking the Chalukyan territory, and this was used as an opportunity by Rajendra Chola to make an attack here. So why am I saying all of this? Simply because next year there's a question asked if Bhoja, whether he was a contemporary of Cholas or not. Right? This answer is not got right by memorizing those dates and years and facts. It simply got right by knowing all these storylines. And how do you know all these stories? Simply when you know that the right way to learn medieval India, right way to learn about the difficult areas of medieval India is by getting to know about the stories. Okay, and it's only such an approach can help you get the width, it can help you get the depth aspect. And as I told you, one aspect without the other does not matter. You need to have both coverage as well as clarity and depth, as well as mains preparation, which is what I mentioned as convergence. It's only when all the three are there, your chances of certainly getting the questions out of medieval India right actually becomes possible. Right? Medieval India is just a reference that I use here for the discussion. It applies equally true for every other subject aspect. Alright, so make sure that you do not waste time on content that does not matter. Make sure that the way you read the subject is to genuinely develop an interest in the subject. It's to genuinely develop certain depth as well as coverage of more and more areas. And that should happen effortlessly. It should not happen as a result of rote memorization from all these kind of useless factual data. Right? So getting to understand the storyline, getting to know concepts, physical concepts, scientific phenomenon, causes, if it's a case of geography, right? Or getting to know about the political philosophies and theories underlying constitutional constitutional articles. You know, this is the way how you actually enhance your depth of your reading, as well as by ensuring you read more connected areas. All right. So when you do your remediation for this year, make sure you don't read useless content. Make sure whatever you do enhances your depth, brings in more areas. Simply don't read a textbook just like last year. Don't take the first page to the last page and just keep going on from one page to the other. That's not the objective. Alright. And the next shortcoming that may prevent you from remedying yourself is incomplete learning. I'll tell you what it is. In my ideal way of learning, you read a chapter, you have to close your book, think, recollect what all have you read, try to write it down as a summary, right, in your own words. These are not points. Point making is a useless exercise for prelims, because what do you have to make as a point when every single line, every single paragraph in your NCERT textbooks are all important? What will you extract as points? Everything is important. So instead, just have a broad recollection of what you have read and note it down in the form of a summary. Next, follow it up by doing all the exercises that are given in the back of the chapter. And once that is done, go have a look at PYQs. Test yourself about the content that you have read. Does it really help you handle random PYQs? Right? Then go take some tests on this particular topic, some surprise questions which have never been asked in the previous year's questions. It's only when all these 5 steps are completed, it means your learning is complete. Just because you read a NCERT chapter for 1 hour, 1.5 hours, after that you just close your book and move on. Or sometimes what happens is, many times when you read your NCERTs, you come across very difficult areas to read and your mind forces you to give up on reading. Right? So for the next 2-3 days, you don't even come to the books. So after some time, you lose interest in reading. Then after a month, you are told of some other book called as Lucent for history. Now you start reading it again, 5 pages to 10 pages. You feel it's so difficult, you put it down, you drop it. Right? Such giving up attitude will also prevent you from having a complete understanding of any subject. So make sure once you start a work, let it take 2 hours, let it take 3 hours. Maybe you can take some 5 minutes break in between. But ensure that the sequence of steps are correctly done. Learning, summarizing, exercising, testing. Right? When all of this is completed in one stretch, only then your learning is meaningful. If you have not been doing this kind of learning in your previous years, that is a very fundamental issue. You can never learn properly if the system is not followed, right? And why does that happen? Simply because you're learning because of fear and not because of a genuine interest in knowing something. Your mind is constantly bothered by the thought of what if I fail one more time. So your mind wants to simply evade failures, and the minute you start facing difficulties, your mind starts believing that oh, this is making you feel like a failure again, and you would want to give up and move on, right? Understand this. It's a human instinct to just want to run away from anything that makes you feel like a failure. And your inability to comprehend anything that's written, if you feel it's difficult, yes, it makes you feel like a failure and you want to run away from that. That's why you give up, right? The only difference between those who clear, those who don't clear, is whether you have given up or did you still continue to make sure you successfully understand what you cannot normally understand, right? Yes, it takes a lot of efforts. It requires stamina. It requires perseverance. It requires simply just not giving up attitude, right? And that not giving up attitude is tested in various phases in this exam preparation process. All right. So do not read out of fear. When you read out of fear, you would want to go towards the easiest of the reading materials. Somebody could promise you 100 pages in that entire medieval history could be complete, and you feel that okay, only 100 pages, now let me read it. And after reading 100 pages, you start faking that as if you have mastered this particular subject. No. Even a Satish Chandra, when read repeatedly again and again and again, can only be useful up to handling 70% of the medieval questions. So just a 100-page content, what is going to be the use of it? Nothing, right? And why would you do this despite knowing the fact that you need to read your books? Simply because reading books makes you feel like a failure. All right. So do not give up. If you find it difficult, go to YouTube or take your lectures one more time. Go find out the right person to teach you medieval India or any other subject for that matter. After all this is done, now come back to the books. Make sure you read the books, right? There is simply no substitute which is shorter in size than a standard textbook that can actually help you crack prelims. So when you start course correcting yourself in this year, make sure these mistakes don't happen, right? Let me summarize those shortcomings. Let me summarize the roadblocks that you will face so that you can be aware of them and not fall victim to these shortcomings. First, don't waste time reading content that does not really matter. How do you figure out content that does not really matter? If enough PYQ questions have been asked in that area, it means UPSC is exhausted with that area. Or if a topic requires totally irrelevant factual memorization, I would say just leave that. It's better to not waste time memorizing, because even if you end up memorizing, you will still not be able to retrieve it on the day of your examination. So don't do that. Instead, focus on an interesting way of reading a subject. If it's history, get to know the storylines, get to know about all the sequence of interconnected events that took place. It depends upon how history is taught to you. If it's polity, get to know about the entire philosophy, constitutional assembly discussions and debates to the extent possible, any Supreme Court judgments on those issues, so as to get a complete coverage of that particular topic, so as to get into the depths of a particular topic, right? And when you read your books, when you feel difficult, don't simply give up. Don't be distracted. Make sure 5 important tasks, 5 important steps are performed: reading, summarizing, exercising, and then testing. At least these 4 processes should be completed, right? And do not read out of fear. Instead, read out of a genuine interest to learn things. Do not be tempted to find shortcuts simply because reading from the textbooks appears to be difficult. There are no shortcuts. Every successful topper would have mastered all the basic textbooks. If you're not able to do that, there is a problem. You have to find ways to address the problem and not find shortcuts. All right. So this is all about the mindset towards change that you actually require to make a fruitful year ahead, leading to the upcoming prelims. All right. So how do you restart your prelims preparation? What areas can you start with? So that will be the topic for the upcoming video. So stay tuned and be connected, and in the next video you will find me discussing about how to plan a prelims preparation ahead for the next 9 months leading to your prelims 2026. All right. So thank you.